Well, we finally got around to roasting our pumpkins the other day. So we started off by washing the pumpkins, and then we cut them in half. And we ended up scooping all the insides out of the pumpkin, all the loose insides. There's some pulp and a bunch of seeds. And so we tried to get that out of the pumpkin and save that for later, because we're going to try to get these seeds out of this pulp, and we're going to try to roast these. So then we ended up preheating the oven to 375, and we're going to put our pumpkin in the oven, cut side down, and usually this takes about an hour, but for a large pumpkin like this, each half took about an hour and a half. And then we've got to make sure that it pierces with a fork easily, and it needs to pierce all the way through to the inside easily, or else you need to cook it a little bit longer. So now we're going to get to the point where when the pumpkin's cooked, we're going to try to save the inside of the pumpkin so that we can make our pumpkin puree out of this. So there's basically two methods to this. One is you can basically just kind of scoop it out of the inside and then try to scrape it off the skin so that only the outside of the pumpkin is left. Your other method is if you can get the pumpkin roasted properly. This won't always happen. If you can get the skin to just peel off, that's going to be your best bet to being able to maximize the amount of pulp you can get off your pumpkin. We only really had maybe one that peeled real easy. So then after that, since this one peeled, we cut it up so that we could put it into the blender. So we're going to take the inside of this pumpkin basically in the blender. We're going to try to puree that up to try to make our pumpkin puree, which is basically what you can use in your recipes for pumpkin pie and pumpkin bread and other recipes. So a lot of these pumpkins were pretty watery. You end up after you puree it, it ends up being kind of an applesauce consistency, but you end up having water separate out on it. So we decided that we would cook it down to try to get some of the excess water out of the puree. You can see after you cook it, it darkens quite a bit. It gets a little bit darker, and then after this, it's basically done, ready to cool off and freeze. As for the pulp and everything that we got out of the pumpkin, we put that in a bowl of water, scoop all the seeds that float to the top, and then basically you got to work out pulp with your hands and try to separate the seeds from some of the pulp, and try to get the rest of the seeds to float to the surface. Once they float to the surface, we're just going to put them in a bowl and get them all collected up. So you end up with a little bit of pulp still on the seeds, and so basically, to help get the rest of the pulp off, what we're going to do is we're just going to cook these for around 10 minutes in boiling water, and that'll basically cook the rest of that pulp off of the seeds. And once that they've cooked for 10 minutes, basically we just we're able to put them in a colander and basically spray them off, and then the only thing you got left is your pumpkin seeds. So we'll lay these out to dry, try to get them somewhat dry, dry them off on a paper towel so that we can get ready to roast these. So once we got them all dry, basically we're going to mix them with a couple tablespoons of butter, some melted butter. We're gonna get this all mixed up. Now to season these, there's many different ways to season them. Basically all I'm going to do is just throw some Slap Your Mama. I ended up using like 2 teaspoons of Slap Your Mama in these seeds and mixing it up. That's just kind of the easy way I like to do it. So once you get these all mixed up, we're just going to spread them out on a pan. Try to get them as even as possible, basically, so that they roast evenly. And then basically we're just going to throw them in the oven, same temperature as the pumpkins on the other level of the oven. This allows us at least to do two things at once here. It does take a while to roast all these pumpkins. So every 5 minutes or so, you're basically 5-10 minutes, you're going to basically take these things out. You're going to stir them up and then lay them back out flat and put them back in. And you're checking these for when they're roasted. When you finally get to the point where they're roasted, you'll notice that there'll be less moisture on them. They'll be pretty much dry, and then that'll be the time that they're done.
So we ended up roasting one large pumpkin, and then we ended up with 1.5 smaller pumpkins. So we ended up with 1/2 of a pumpkin here that we haven't roasted yet. We're just going to store this in the fridge for now. And then we ended up with about 1/2 quart of pumpkin seeds and roasted those. And they ended up probably roasting them a little too long. They're a little browner than I probably wanted, but they still taste good, and we'll eat those right up. Pumpkin puree, we got that all made up. We ended up with 11 packages, or enough to make 11 pies. So we got a 4-cup package here, and the rest of these are all 2-cup packages. So we got enough to make 11 pies just out of the 2.5 pumpkins that we did. We ended up with an extra cup, and we've got pumpkin bread already mixed up and made in the oven. It's cooking right now. So I think that it wouldn't take very many pumpkins. I think like 5 pumpkins or so, and you pretty much would have a whole year's supply of, pumpkin puree. So it wouldn't take very many pumpkins to get you all set for the year. So I think we've definitely got a year's supply of pumpkin. So it was a rainy day today. It was a pretty good day to just go ahead and roast these pumpkins up and turn them into puree. Not very good for being outside today. So we're just gonna go ahead and throw these in the freezer, and then we should be able to get these out anytime we want to make pumpkin pie. Thanks for watching.